Not even a full week in office, and Donald Trump is already vying for impeachment. I mean, we knew the man finished fast, but this is like really fast. Welcome back to Occupy Democrats. I'm David Reddish. Donald Trump capped off his inaugural week this week with a stunning lapse of judgment, even by his own standards. And for anyone checking, you need a microscope to find his standards on a decency chart. For proof, look no further than any number of executive orders he handed down this week. Attacking LGBTQ people by restricting definitions of gender and expunging queer rights from the White House official site. Pulling out of the WHO. This with a bird flu breakout on the rise. It's not like Trump has ever had a problem managing a disease outbreak before, right? His attempt to end birthright citizenship, which has already violated the 14th Amendment. U.S. District Court Judge John Coffenhauer blocked the executive order, saying, quote, "I can't remember another case where the question presented was as clear as this one is," end quote. Judge Coffenhauer is a conservative Reagan appointee, by the way. And yet, none of these horrifying actions even came close to getting him impeached. Not nearly as close as he stumbled today. Even his pardoning of Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht, a man accused of a murder-for-hire plot and one who built a career out of drug trafficking, doesn't even come this close. Nor, for that matter, does his pardoning of January 6th insurrectionists, including the violent criminals that attacked police. Trump, who was endorsed by police unions last year, actually released and expunged the records of people who beat, tased, maimed, or used chemical weapons against Washington, D.C. police on January 6th. No. While all of these actions test the boundaries of good taste, political common sense, and basic human decency, Trump did something even more egregious this morning. While touring the site of Hurricane Helene in western North Carolina, Trump claimed he wanted to abolish FEMA. It's crazy, but that's not what's impeachable. That comes later. First, check this out.
We're going to do a lot for North Carolina. They've been very slow. I don't know why it's been so bad. This has been one of the worst I've seen. Katrina, of course, was something that obviously that was a long time ago. That was not good. But this has been very slow. I don't know if that was for political reasons because they lost the state. Biden lost the state. Maybe he felt he doesn't care. Maybe there were other reasons. I don't know. But this has been very slow. By any standard, this has been very slow. And we're gonna make up for lost time.
Trump, of course, spread lies about FEMA on the campaign trail last fall. Among other things, he claimed that President Biden was withholding aid from Republican areas. He claimed Biden wouldn't speak to Georgia Governor Brian Kemp, something Trump only said after Kemp praised Biden and FEMA's response, and that the Biden administration was diverting FEMA funds to illegal immigrants. Trump's advisor and wannabe president, Elon Musk, also oversaw the spread of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on Twitter. Those lies resulted in FEMA employees being attacked when they tried to lead the relief effort. In the same press conference, Trump went on to say something even more shocking. When asked about the California wildfires, Trump said this.
No conditions you're going to push for aid.
Well, in California, I have a condition. In California, we want them to have voter ID so the people have a voice, because right now the people don't have a voice because you don't know who's voting, and it's very corrupt. And we also want them to release the water. If they released the water, they wouldn't have had a problem. If they released the water when I told them to, because I told them to do it 7 years ago, if they would have done it, you wouldn't have had the problem that you had. You might not have even had a fire. So, but here I don't have that. It's a different thing. You got hit by a storm. The people are incredible. They worked really well. Franklin was fantastic, and other groups. By the way, other groups came in that were also fantastic, and other states came in. Tennessee and a couple of others came in. And they really help. That's the way it's supposed to be. No, this is a different kind of a thing.
That's right. Trump said he would withhold aid from California unless the state changes its election laws to demand voter ID. That could constitute election interference or quid pro quo under U.S. law. Remember, this is the behavior that got Trump impeached the first time when he pressured Ukraine to provide him with intelligence on Joe and Hunter Biden. He threatened to withhold military aid at that time. Now, I have a personal connection to what Trump has to say in these clips. First, my family has had to deal with FEMA before. In 2022, my parents and my grandmother all of whom live in South Florida, had their homes heavily damaged by Hurricane Ian. Fortunately, with the help of FEMA and disaster relief, they eventually returned home. My grandmother in particular had her home totally gutted as a result of hurricane damage, and it took months to rebuild. To put this in some more perspective, the cleanup took well over a year, and there is still debris in some areas. That doesn't say anything about the inefficiency of FEMA. It says everything about the level of damage these people suffered. And at present, I'm dealing with FEMA over losses I suffered from the California wildfires. So are many of my neighbors. It's hard to understand just how damaging natural disasters like hurricanes or fires can be until you've witnessed one firsthand. Hurricane Helene caused similar damage to North Carolina, and it will take years for the areas to be cleared, cleaned, and rebuilt. That's part of why having an agency like FEMA to lead the effort is so important. And as a Californian, someone who was briefly displaced because of the wildfires, Trump's statement here is beyond offensive. In the first place, voter ID laws have no bearing on rebuilding from the wildfires. Trump also says, falsely, that Los Angeles is refusing water from Northern California. What he suggests there is an impossible thing. There's no way to magically transport hundreds of thousands of gallons of water over more than 500 miles distance. We don't have the infrastructure for it. Oh, and as a side note, Trump placed a freeze on projects listed under the Build Back Better Act. You know, the kind of infrastructure that could help in a disaster like this one. Also, when it comes to voter ID, there's a common misconception. People do have to show ID to vote. We call that voter registration. Therefore, when a voter goes to a poll or fills out a ballot at home, he has already proven his identity and his eligibility. Some people have proposed that voter fraud could still take place, that voters could impersonate the real thing, but consider this for a moment. What would someone need to know to impersonate a voter? A voter's address? Yes. Date of birth? Possibly. How he signs his name? But most importantly, that fraudulent voter would have to know that the person he's impersonating had not already voted and would not try to in the future. If fake voters were doing so, there would be massive outcry and considerable documentation of this phenomenon. There would be evidence. But there is none, because Trump is lying. Again. And now he's vying for impeachment with his latest remarks. Given that Republicans have gone out of their way to support and stroke Trump, we don't anticipate him getting convicted anytime soon. It's just further evidence that Trump has no regard for the rule of law and that the Republican Party has abdicated all responsibility in the wake of fluffing their new boss. And it is disgusting. This is Occupy Democrats.